There is not another thing that means more than God and people. That is the meaning of life, right? Happy people in Uganda are happy because they have God and they have each other. They don't have anything else, but they have God and each other, and they're figuring out how to survive, and there's joy.
You talked earlier about the idea of village living being better than living with just way too many people in our world, finding 5 people within 5 miles that you can deeply invest in. But what about people who live in cities, in urban areas, and they don't live in a little village where you can have a little campfire in your backyard? They live in an apartment complex. How do they find that concept?
I say you get something to gather around, because that you can build this in any place. I am in a metroplex. When we moved here, and this was our goal, we moved from Austin, which has a huge sprawl, and I was just weary of driving 45 minutes to go to dinner with one of my friends. It was so spread out. And when we moved here, I was like, you know what? We've got to make a huge metroplex seem small. And so we made a lot of intentional choices to bring that proximity into our world, to choose friends that we would see as often as possible. And so it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is very possible. And so it's beginning to notice who's already around you and how could you pursue a deeper relationship with them. You can build this. I know my baristas' names. We picked our favorite restaurants that we frequent over and over and over again, so they know us and we know them. And things like that, choices that you can make that bring a rhythm and pattern to your daily life. And then to be an initiator. I would say that's probably the greatest way to have this in your life if you're craving it. Now, what people will say is, I do initiate, and nobody ever initiates back. I've heard it 1 million times. So I'm just assuming it's probably true for everyone. If you initiate, which I would say a lot of people don't, but if you do, then you're tired of it. You feel like you're the only one that does it. And my word to you is keep doing it, because that is what's needed in the world, and a lot of people just may not do it. They just may never initiate, and you may continue to play that role for people, but I promise you, you will have friends if you can be that person.
What about somebody who has an independent personality and says, you know what, I kind of like dogs and cats more than I like people, or I like just being by myself out in nature? I bet they still were created for community. And I know that you've done some scientific research into this. What do the scientists and the health experts say about the effect loneliness has on our well-being?
The science is that we cannot live alone, that we isolated will die earlier, that people physically die from loneliness, because there is something about our brains that were built to connect with people. And it's interesting because the greatest problem that I would say is in our generation is anxiety. It is rampant. There's never been more diagnosed anxiety in the world than there is right now. And even the people that aren't diagnosed are struggling with it, right? There's anxiety everywhere we look. So what I would say is the way we heal is connection. You may ask yourself, why would I share my problems? What good is that going to do? They can't fix my problems. Nobody can help me with my problems. Why would I waste time and share it with somebody else? And I would say, because your brain, when you share it, face-to-face physical connection, when you are looking at someone and you can see their empathy, that is healing something in your brain and in your body when you share and they empathetically listen. That is happening. So the brain circuits are reconnecting. It's why therapy works. It's why people pay a lot of money for it, because something about sharing your problems, not just getting advice, because actually you don't crave advice. You probably know the right thing. It's that you crave connection.
People crave connection. I love that. I think that's absolutely true. What do you think keeps some people from investing in deep relationships?
The hardest part is how much is stacked against us doing this. We have, number one, a culture that is built to be independent and to live isolated, and to even value that, to say, good for you, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you don't need anybody else. Like we prize these things. So we've got a culture. The second thing is we have an enemy that hates it. If this is of God and God built us to be communal, then the enemy is after it to kill, steal, and destroy it. If it is from God, he is in it to take it out. And so we're up against the enemy. And a lot of you have had this in your life, but it all broke down. It's because there's an enemy, and he wants to destroy it at every turn. And I think it's important we know that, so that we fight back and we don't just let a friendship go because it got hard, right? Friendships will be hard, especially the good ones. And so we have to fight back. And then thirdly, we've all been hurt. we've experienced it where it just didn't go right or it didn't feel good. And you're sitting here going, I don't think this works. I've tried it and I've been abandoned and I've been rejected and I've been hurt. And I would just say yes to all of that. That's all true. And yet, if we push through it and we fight for it, it is living. It is life. There is not another thing that means more than God and people. That is the meaning of life, right? Happy people in Uganda are happy because they have God and they have each other. They don't have anything else, but they have God and each other, and they're figuring out how to survive, and there's joy. There's more joy there than I see here in the chaos of our plenty. I see more joy where they need each other. And so here we've got to choose it. We've got to choose to need each other. And it's scary and it doesn't always go right, but when it does, it is worth it. And there is a way for it to go right.
I bet there's some people who are watching us right now thinking, I just don't have good people in my life. I've got some people around me, but they don't make me better. They kind of tear me down. These are people who sort of want me to fit into their life for their purposes. They're not the kind of people that are building me up. What kind of qualities should we look for when we're looking for good friends?
So I would say, first of all, there are people that you need in your life, like you're talking about, and then there's people that need you. And some of the people that feel like a drain to you, they may need you, and you've just got to show up for them, right? Scripture is pretty clear. Like, we need our cohorts that make us better, iron sharpening iron. But there's also a call to be missional and to love people that are hard to love, that aren't going to give a lot back. So there's those two categories, first of all. But when we're looking for the people that we need, the things that I have found to be the very most helpful is if they're humble, if they're vulnerable, and if they're available. Those are the three things that I find to make the best friends. So it's not perfect. In fact, I would say we have too high of expectations on people and we're constantly disappointed by people. I would say you need to expect people to disappoint you. They're all going to disappoint you. And the good news is you will disappoint them right back. And so when we accept that and we know, hey, I'm not expecting you not to disappoint me. I'm not expecting this to be conflict-free. I'm not expecting you to meet all my needs. I just am looking for you to be available and humble and honest. And when we use our words and we start to build friendships around those three things, that is so safe, and everybody's craving that. And then the rest, there's a million enemies to relationships and traps that we fall into. But I would say when those three things are present, you can work through conflict, you can be known and seen, and you can know and see that other person. And then you can clock the hours, because actually the research says for someone to become a best friend or a very, very close friend, it's about 200 hours of time together. So we really need time. And sometimes that time can come naturally from things you do together, but a lot of times we have to prioritize that time and just make it work.
And those three things you mentioned were great. Friends who are vulnerable, available, and
humble. And the humble part is you're willing to work it out. You're willing to sit there and work through a conflict. Because I tell my kids, if you have not had a fight yet with a friend, then they're probably not your good friend. Because most friends, eventually you will have a conflict. And why that matters is because once you've worked through a conflict, then you know you can. And then you can trust that that's gonna be a long-term friend, because we can get to conflict and it might happen again and again, but we can work through it.
Hi, I'm Kirk Cameron, and thanks for watching the Kirk Cameron on TBN YouTube channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. A couple of things. Please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so that you're notified every time a new video is posted. And be sure to share your takeaway in the comments and invite a friend to join the conversation.